The Holy Gospel according to Mark, the 9th chapter. John said to Jesus, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he was not following us." But Jesus said, "Do not stop him, for no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us. For truly I tell you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose the reward. If any of you put a stumbling block before one of these little ones who believe in me, it would be better for you if a great millstone were hung around your neck and you were thrown into the sea. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life maimed than to have two hands and to go to hell, to the unquenchable fire. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It's better for you to enter life lame than to have 2 feet and to be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. It's better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have 2 eyes and to be thrown into hell, where the worm never dies and the fire is never quenched. For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its saltiness, how can you season it? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another." The Gospel of the Lord. I can see it as though it was just yesterday. My 3-year-old nephew was standing in the middle of his room, and you can't see the floor for all the toys that are spread out everywhere. Now, he was sent to his room to begin to pick up some of those toys. Not such a hard thing, really, because the toy box is completely empty, and it'll all fit back in there. But to this small little guy looking around at this great big mess, it's just too much, and he doesn't know where to start. He's completely overwhelmed, and he starts to cry. Now, it might have been tempting to think that he was throwing a temper tantrum and trying to get out of doing his job, but somehow there was a different, sort of desperate tone to his cries. So I went down the hall to take a look, and there he was, small and sad, surrounded by what seemed to be a job too big for him all by himself. So I kind of pushed my way through the cars and the stuffed animals and the Duplo box, and I sat down on his bed. "Why are you crying?" I asked. He sniffed, took a big breath, and said, "I don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, it's okay, I can help. What if we do this together?" So I picked up a couple of toys and I put them in the box. I said, "See, you can do that. Your turn." So he looked down at the floor and he picked up a toy and he walked it over to the toy box. And then he looked at me and I nodded, "Go ahead," and he dropped it in. Then he picked up another and another, and I got up and added a few more to the box, mostly because I promised I would help. And soon he was at the kitchen table drinking from his sippy cup and munching on a cookie. But we've all been there, haven't we? And maybe some of us are even there right now. Standing there staring at something that seems impossible and not knowing where to even begin. Feeling those tears of frustration pushing at the corners of our eyes. Now, it could be a household that's gotten away from us, a kitchen counter overwhelmed with dishes, a laundry room floor covered in clothes, a car that won't fit in the garage for all the clutter. Or it could be a stack of textbooks and hours of homework, your eyelids drooping and no hope of going to sleep anytime soon. Could be a stack of bills that is taller than the balance in the checkbook. Or it could be our calendars. Every day filled with activity, no room to add just one more thing, each obligation demanding our full attention and seeing no way to cut anything back. So often it seems that there is really no help to be found. No one to share the burden, and if we did ask for help, well, we fear we'll be misjudged, like a 3-year-old crying in their room. After all, we need to just toughen up. We need to just figure it out and problem solve. We need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, take responsibility for our situation, and make the best of it. But all of those so-called motivational platitudes insist that we must do it alone. We can't ask for help. We can't look weak or vulnerable. So we silently carry that impossible load until eventually something has to give. Something breaks. The best piece of wisdom I ever received from my advisor in seminary was to look for the grace. I had come into her sitting in her office completely overwhelmed. And I was grieving the loss from a breakup of a long-term relationship. And it was the end of the semester, and I had a paper due in every class. And then I was scheduled to preach at my learning congregation that I spent 8 hours at each week. Find the grace, she said. There will always be grace to be found. And isn't that exactly when we need that grace to turn up? When we're overwhelmed, feeling heartache, feeling at our very weakest. We find strength when we can let go and seek the grace. Swallowing our pride, risking vulnerability, admitting that we need someone to put a few toys in that box so that we don't feel so alone. Well, Moses and the Israelites have been through quite a lot, fleeing Egypt and wandering in the desert, starting over with their freedom and only what they could travel with, moving forward with hope and with God's promise of a new land to call home. So far, God has heard their cries for food and water. The daily supply of manna comes without fail. The Lord has come to Moses on Mount Sinai and given them the gift of the 10 Commandments. A set of boundaries, guidelines, a way to live together within their newfound freedom. A way that's good for themselves and good for the nation they will become when they reach the promised land. But this freedom, it's harder than it would seem, and their new beginning is taking a lot longer than they thought it would. And suddenly the freedom of the future that they don't know is more overwhelming than the past of captivity that they did know. Day after day, manna feeds them, but it isn't the meat and the cucumbers and the garlic that they had in Egypt. Oh, never mind that they were slaves then. Are they throwing a temper tantrum? It seems that their complaining isn't just for the sake of complaining or getting their way. Israel's complaints are a symptom of the underlying problem. They don't know what is next, what the challenge, what the new thing that they'll have to face each day right around the corner. It's overwhelming. And the people cry. Families sobbing in their tents at night. Moses can hear them. He hears the crying and he can't do anything for them. So Moses is overwhelmed too. He begins to cry out to God, surrounded by the troubles of the people that God has called him to care for and to lead. And Moses reminds God that the people are God's responsibility, and Moses can't carry them all. They're too heavy. Moses is tired, he's beat, he's overwhelmed. We can hear it in his words. And haven't we said those things too? Haven't we looked to heaven, shaken our fist, and asked when God is going to deliver on the promises that God has made? We've been there and we've felt it. We may even be there right now. Moses needs grace. We need grace. And the good news is that grace comes. God doesn't tell Moses to stop his whining and get a hold of himself. God doesn't say, okay, Moses, if you can't handle this job, I'll find someone who will. No, God gives Moses grace. God takes the burden. God calls for 70 elders to be brought forward and to be given the same spirit for leading and caring for the people that God gave to Moses back at the burning bush. Moses doesn't slump with defeat. He isn't thinking he's been demoted or diminished. But Moses rejoices that the Lord has spread the work and shared the Spirit. Moses found the grace, or rather, grace found him. And now a shared load is much lighter. In fact, Moses dares to wish that it were spread even a little farther, wishing that all the Lord's people would be prophets, and that the Lord's Spirit would be upon them as well. The abundant help and generosity of God is present in our lives as well. God's grace finds us in and through the community and others who help to carry our load. And as our burden eases, then we can see that we're free to be one of that group of 70, filled with the Spirit, free to step forward to share some of the weight that others are carrying. The big problems of the world are overwhelming. They get more overwhelming every day. Refugees, poverty, hunger, homelessness, disease, global warming, gun violence, racism, sexism, all the isms. Where do we start? There's a lot of ministry we're called to do on God's behalf in the world. Just one person, a drop in the bucket. Like Moses, we realize it is too heavy. We cannot carry this world's suffering on our own. The Lord gives us ears to hear the crying. God gives us hearts to bear the burden of compassion. God gives us a desire to do something, but never alone. Never alone. For a few years now, the hashtag for our Southeastern Iowa Synod has been "In This Together." We're not one, but 70, or rather hundreds or thousands, even millions within the whole ELCA. Will one crop walk in Cedar Rapids raise enough money to put an end to hunger or put an end to the need for clean water? Will a few dollars to support a walker make a difference? Yes. Yes, it will, because there's a walk in other cities and towns all over the country. And there's not only crop walks, but there's walks for cancer, Alzheimer's, today a walk for Down syndrome, heart disease walks, and so many more. Enough walkers, enough dollars to give some hope to all. 1 mile plus another, plus another, plus another, all of those miles adding up in Iowa, across the country. Yes, it all matters. The ministry and the work of the church, God's work done by your hands, it sets off a ripple that becomes waves of grace, washing over a world that needs it desperately. The spirit of thanksgiving and generosity, all of us together as Gloria Day are able to share God's grace here within our congregation and out far beyond our doors. And it's a grace we can share because it was first so abundantly given to us. Together we carry much more than the burden any one of us could carry on our own. And Moses helped us out with a little math. 70 is better than 1. And we have more than 70. In fact, we have more than double that many households contributing to the work we do as Gloria Day together. You have given faithfully with time, passion, and expertise, as well as with financial help. Thank you. But there's always more to be done to tell the story of God's saving grace. And there's always more to do to serve God's people in the world, to bear the burdens, to carry the loads, and to lighten the sorrow. We aren't just in this together, but our God has long been in this with us. As a burning bush, as a cloud and pillar of fire through the wilderness, and as a child born in Bethlehem, bearing our burdens the burdens of the world hanging on his cross, and then burden no more, risen from the tomb. We're all in this together indeed. So in our days to come, let's consider the grace that we have found, or rather the grace that has first found us. Give thanks and celebrate, and then share it. Amen.